Explain to me how anyone could think this was an accident at all. The discovery of the backpack itself already proves that there is more to this story. Hello, guys. Dylan here, and welcome back. On today's episode, we're going to cover the unsolved mystery surrounding the deaths of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. This story at first might seem like it was a day of hiking gone wrong, but I believe that there is much more to this story. And I look forward to hearing your responses to this in the comments below at the end of this video. And also, before we begin, if you're a fan of unsolved mysteries, the unexplained, and creepy stories, please hit that like button and subscribe. 21-year-old Kris Kremers was often described as being very open, creative-minded, and an all-around very responsible person. And her best friend, 22-year-old Lisanne Froon, also shared very similar qualities, possibly why they got along so well. Lisanne was described as, by her friends and family as being aspiring, optimistic, and also noted that she was a very passionate volleyball player. These two Dutch students both grew up in Amersfoort, and they would both go on to attend the University of Utrecht. Graduating within their respective fields of study, Kris would go on to graduate with a degree in cultural social education, specializing in art education, and Lisanne would graduate with a degree in applied science. And these two, being very excited about just graduating college, they would come up with this plan in around October 2013 to go on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Panama. And they were very passionate about going on this trip, so over the next 6 months, they would just plan out every detail of this trip to Panama while working as hard as they could to save up to support this dream that they had. Being aspiring and very open-minded like they were, they planned to seize the moment and use this 6-week planned vacation as an opportunity to learn Spanish and to give back to the locals. And they planned to do this primarily by volunteering at the local schools in the area and working with the local children. On March 15, 2014, Kris and Lisanne would arrive in Panama ready to start this 6-week adventure. For those not familiar with Panama, it is a small tropical transcontinental country in Central and South America. It is bordered to its west by Costa Rica and Colombia to its southeast. To the north of the country lies the Caribbean Sea, and to the south, the Pacific Ocean. The first 2 weeks of this trip was absolutely amazing for Kris and Lisanne. The two Dutch women would spend their time exploring Panama at their leisure around the city of Bocas del Toro. They would also spend part of their time interacting with the locals and taking pictures of everything they did before eventually arriving in Boquete, which is a very small town near the city of David, right off the well-known Pan-American Highway on March 29th. They went to Boquete to meet up with their host family. Now, this was an arrangement that they had made prior to leaving their home country, and they had also made arrangements through a Dutch-ran language center named Spanish by the River to work at a local elementary school. So a few days after they got set up at their host family's house, they decided to visit this local elementary school that they, scheduled to volunteer at. And upon arrival, they would receive this very rude reception from the teachers. The teachers would go on to explain that there was some miscommunication and that they didn't currently have work for Kris and Lisanne. And they'd tell them to, wait a week or two and come back and we can go from there. Upon hearing this news, Kris and Lisanne would be a little upset by this, but they didn't let it crush their spirits. And they decided to seize the moment and hike the nearby El Pinasta trail. Now, this is a very popular, well-traveled trail through the rugged terrain along the border of Costa Rica. This leads to this beautiful 360-degree overlook of this amazing mountainous rainforest known as El Mirador, or the Overlook. Now, these two young women, they were well known for being these active hikers, and they were considered, very skilled. And being confident in their abilities, they would decide to take this trail without a traditional guide. And on April 1st, 2014, Kris and Lisanne, accompanied by a local dog named Azul, who belonged to the shop owners of a restaurant named the Il Pinasta that sat at the trailhead, would step off in the early morning, packing light and bringing only what they saw fit for what they had planned as a short day hike. You know, they brought their swimming suits, sunglasses, their cameras, because they planned to take multiple beautiful pictures of this scenery that they were about to hike through. So on the night of April 1st, 2014, Azul would bark at his front door of his home. He wagged his tail left and right as fast as he could, just waiting to be let in. And his owners would, climb out of bed and slowly make their way to the door and open the front door and look, and they'd be surprised because they saw Azul sitting on the doorstep alone. Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, they never came back. Their host family would go on to search the immediate area, yelling out for Kris and Lisanne. After almost an hour of searching and yelling for them around their home in the immediate area, they would kind of give up and wait until the morning to alert their disappearance to the local authorities. Following this, on April 2nd, 2014, Kris and Lisanne would miss a scheduled appointment with a local tour guide, and this would ultimately prompt their host family to report them missing. Their host family would report them missing to what is known as the National System of Civil Protection, and initially the NSCP would not take this report seriously. Their explanation for this would be because they thought that this type of activity and behavior was normal amongst tourists, and they wouldn't end up getting involved in this case for nearly 4 days. And to add to this, Kris and Lisanne's parents had stopped receiving their daily updates from the girls. Every day they were texting them, or they were giving them phone calls, or even going on Facebook Messenger just to stay in contact with them and let them know how the trip was going. And, up to this point, they had never missed a message or a daily update or check-in. So, immediately their parents saw this as completely strange and they began to worry. By April 3rd, 2014, this massive search party was formed by the locals, and they performed multiple well-organized and aerial and ground searches of the area where they believed that Kris and Lisanne had gone hiking. But even after all this effort, multiple days would pass and there was still no sign of the two girls. On April 6th, 2014, the parents of both the girls would arrive in Panama, along with detectives from the Netherlands and other Dutch authorities to assist in the search effort. They would bring with them search and rescue canines who were trained to detect a scent for up to 9 days, but yet again, no leads or clues of the girls' whereabouts would turn up. By April 8th, 2014, Kris and Lisanne's families would come together and they'd come up with $30,000, and they would offer this as a reward for any information leading to the discovery of their missing children. And you're probably thinking that this doesn't sound like a lot of money, but in Panama standards, this is equivalent to a lot of money. And it's somewhere in the ballpark of $500,000, so just take that into consideration. But even after this reward was posted, still no leads would turn up, and even after these numerous extensive searches by the locals, the investigators, and the search and rescue team, not a single trace of Kris or Lisanne would be found, not even a single item of their belongings, and not even a single footprint. After all this, a Dutch investigator would come forward and he would make this public statement. He stated that the women could not have just simply disappeared from the trail. He would make it known that he expected foul play. So following all of this, 10 heartbreaking, nerve-wracking weeks would pass before a local woman would spot a backpack just floating along the riverbank. And knowing that these girls were missing, she would quickly run over and she would scoop it up out of the water, retrieving it, and she would take it to the local police department, where she would deliver this story of how she discovered this backpack. Inside the backpack, the police would discover $83 in cash, Lisanne's passport, a single water bottle, a digital camera, 2 bras, and 2 cell phones. And as strange as all this is going to sound, all of the items recovered from this backpack were neatly packed in there. They were dry and they were in perfect condition, which is completely odd and suspicious considering this story that this local woman had just delivered to the police. saying that she spotted it floating down the river. And, like, what do you even take from that? Now, having the cell phones of Kris and Lisanne in their possession, a forensic search of the cell phones would be conducted. It would be found that between Kris's iPhone and Lisanne's Samsung Galaxy, starting on April 1st, the day that they left on their hike, there would be multiple attempts to call 112, which is the international emergency number, and 911, the emergency number for Panama, had been performed. And these calls didn't end on April 1st. Numerous attempts would continue over the next couple days. But it is believed that due to the extremely poor reception within the jungle, that only one of these calls ever went through, and it lasted only 1 second. It would also be found that between April 7th and April 10th, that there were more than 77 failed attempts to access Kris's phone. And on April 11th, there would be one final signal check before Kris's cell phone battery had died. Following April 11th, there was no further cell phone activity on either of the girls' phones. Police would also search the digital camera that was found in Lisanne's backpack, and they would find that it contained 100 photos taken while the girls were lost. And out of all of these photos, the whole 100 of them, 10 were taken on April 1st, but the remaining 90 were all taken at nighttime. On April 8th, between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., so this would be a total of 7 days after the girls had gone missing, a lot of these pictures were blurry. It was believed that Kris and Lisanne were using the flash on their camera to kind of guide their way through the dark, lighting up the path in front of them. Some other pictures found on this phone were of trash and toilet paper and things like this. And it was believed that Kris and Lisanne were lost at this point, and they were leaving items like this as markers and then taking pictures of them just in case they ran back across it to know that they looped back around and they circled back, just so they could keep track of where they were going. There was also one very strange picture found, and it was a picture of the close-up of the back of Kris's head. And while looking through this camera, investigators would also find that one single photo was missing completely. And someone must have taken time to delete this, but for what reason? So the file name for the pictures on the camera started at 499 and continued from 500 on. And image 509 was missing. So why is this picture so important? Well, it falls between the last daytime photo taken on April 1st and the first nighttime photo taken on April 8th. So this is believed that it might be the missing link. Also to be noted, this photo itself was not deleted from the camera, but in some other means. Investigators would visit the location where the backpack had been found near this unmapped village of Alto Romero, which is 5 miles from where the girls had been hiking. While there, they would make another discovery. They would find Kris's denim shorts unzipped and neatly folded on a rock nearby where Lisanne's backpack had been found. Now, 2 months following this, they would make more discoveries. They would find a pelvic bone and a boot with a human foot still inside. DNA testing would be conducted after these discoveries, and it would confirm that these body parts belonged to the two missing hikers, Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. And following the discovery of these first two bones, 30 additional human bones would be found, widely scattered around the area. And not only were the bones of Kris and Lisanne in this mix, but 3 other additional unknown people. It would be later noted by anthropologists that Lisanne's bones and skeletal remains appeared as if they, decomposed naturally, based on the discovery of this small amounts of human flesh still attached to the bones. But Kris's bones, on the other hand, well, they're not sure what exactly to make of them. Kris's bones appeared to have been bleached. And to add to this, they also found phosphorus on her bones. But due to the fact that they were unable to recover large remains from either of the girls, forensic pathologists were unable to determine what exactly happened to Kris and Lisanne. It's highly speculated that foul play was involved and that they were possibly kidnapped and murdered, or even possibly that they were captured and eaten by cannibals. But after all of this and after all the information found, authorities have officially ruled that Lisanne Froon and Kris Kremers' deaths were caused by a hiking accident. Hey guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Wow, that was a very interesting and, heartbreaking story. And honestly, I don't believe that this was a hiking accident at all. And I hope one day that the truth is brought to light about what really happened to Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. Before you go, please drop a comment down below and let me know what you think happened to Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. And as always, if you have a future story suggestion, please share.